Okay, welcome everyone to the next lecture. We're talking today about how we're going to edit audio with Reaper. So once you have recorded your music, you might want to change it using a DAW such as Reaper. And how to edit it, we will show this time how to mix the audio and make it sound a little more pleasant or a little more to your wish. And we will talk about that next time. As always, please turn on your cameras. If you have any questions, to use the chat or raise a hand, and it will be, as always, recorded. So we'll have some topic. The first half is, or the first 3 points are in the presentation, and then we will switch over to Reaper, and I will show you how to do things hands-on. So first, what we have to know is what is a DAW. It's a short for digital audio workstation. And basically, it combines several things that were usually separated in the past when you had no computers recording music yet. So you can record and edit in this program. You can also mix several tracks and microphones together. And you can also insert additional effects to change the sound, which commonly would be used with such outboard equipment, as you can see in this picture on the right. So all of these features are now combined into one program, which we call a DAW. Today we'll be talking only about editing, and so the question is, why do we even want to edit audio? Why not just use one take? Because with editing, we can try to support the musical performance in a way that we can combine several takes into the perfect performance. So maybe there's some notes that you didn't hit in the last part, or just another take, it was a little nicer, then you can just combine these takes and make it one perfect performance. You can also do things which cannot be done in live performance. For example, quickly switch mutes, which you can just record in different takes and then combine. And of course, sometimes you need to edit to adapt to the needs of different media. Now let's talk about Reaper. We are working with Reaper, and Reaper is pretty much used almost not everywhere, but it's used a lot. Everyone knows Reaper because it's a very professional software, but it's very little cost. It has a very long evaluation period. Basically, you can use the trial as long as you want, but you have all the features of the full version with the trial. What's also good about it is it runs on basically every operating system, and it's everything that you need and more than you will probably ever use. But that makes it just very versatile, and you just have to learn this one program. And when you need more, you will just learn more about this program, but you don't need to change software once you're reaching your end of what you want to achieve. Let's talk a little bit about audio files and Reaper project files. Something that I certainly, before I started studying this, was not maybe 100% clear myself about. So we have, on the one side, we have audio files, which have different file formats, WAV format, MP3, AAC, etc. And they're basically like old tapes or something. There's just one file that has the audio information. It can be processed by Reaper, so you can import it into Reaper, but they're basically the final format. They're playable by almost every device, but you also cannot change like something within this file because it's just a file. So you cannot edit it. It's not like a project. It's just the final exported audio. And usually you have two tracks, which are left and right. On the other side, you have Reaper project files, which are a project file format. So they are not audio files, and you can see they're also much smaller. But what they do is they reference to audio files, which are used within the project. So this is why they're not the final product. They cannot be opened with, like, you cannot burn this on a CD and just play back a Reaper file. So that you can only open it with Reaper, but of course you can change everything within it, and you can have as many tracks as you need, and then combine them basically to the final product. So this is basically a file where we work, and this is the file that we get either with our recordings or with our final mix. When we open Reaper, it kind of looks like this. You see here already some content, but the overall overview is that you have the toolbar on the top, and it just basically gives you some tools to work and to edit. Then on the right, what you have above is the timeline. So going from left to right, time progresses, and underneath you have the arrange area, which is basically extension of the timeline. There you can arrange the clips of the different tracks. So if the marker here, you can see, goes from left to right when you play back, and it just plays back everything that's underneath this timeline. Then on the left, you can see the different tracks which are being used. You can have, as I said, many different tracks, and there are basically, yeah, they're forming this grid. On the left, the tracks. So you have vertically the tracks, and on the right, this is the timeline. Then you have the transport area, which is this middle section here. Here you can just start, stop playback, start recording, go to specific plays, change tempo or click, etc. And below there, you have the mixer area. So while this is basically the recording, like, like the tape in the past, here you have the mixer where you have a link between these tracks and these tracks. Here they're called channel strips. Here they're called tracks. You can see that track 3 here and track 3 here, they're lighting up together, and basically they're the same track. And here you can just change stuff like balance, panorama. You can see the level. You can also add effects. And lastly, on the left, you have the master output, and this is basically the representation of the final audio before you export it. So here you can see the final master, usually stereo, where you will see the levels of your master file. If something is clipping, you will see it here. It can be that the single tracks are not clipping, but if you add everything together, it can be too loud and clipping. So here you also have level meters, and you should adjust for that. And of course, you can also add effects for the master once more if you want. Let's look a little closer at a track control. And here you have, again, several things. First, of course, the track number, just a number starting at 1. Then you have the track name. You can change the name however you want. Left of that, you have what's called a record arm. It means that you can arm this track, meaning make it ready to be recorded on. On the right, you have the level meters. So you can see the level of this track, either what's been recorded in or what's been recorded on. And also, if you are arming the track, you can also choose the input if you're trying to record something. You need to, of course, choose which microphone to use. If we now look at the transport a little more in detail before we go into the program, you have other controls. You have the record. This is now not a record arm, but this is actually recording, meaning that this is recording on all the tracks which you are made ready to be recorded. So you record armed. Then you have just the play and space, the play button, which you can also use space as a shortcut. You have the stop, you have the pause, you have tempo, and you have time signature. Tempo and time signature we will get to later. One very important thing, of course, is you need to choose the right audio device. And this is a Windows screenshot. I will show you how to do it on the Mac that I have. For Windows users, we recommend you to use ASE for All, which is a ASIO driver, which lets you to use basically anything with the software. ASIO is usually a little more stable. So if you want to use your internal loudspeakers or headphones or something, you can do that with the ASIO for all driver. And this is how it looks like on Mac. Okay, the rest here is just information for you. So where do you get Reaper? You get it on focus. There it was. Reaper.fm. Okay. So on Reaper.fm, sorry, you will see this website and you can just click download Reaper and you will get the latest version. Again, the full feature trial is for free. And if you want to purchase it, it's also not so expensive. ASIO for all. What I was talking about for Windows computer users is this website. And also here, you will be able to download the latest version and install it, and then you're able to choose it. I know the website looks a little shady, but it's actually a good software. Okay. Now, if we want to start, we just open Reaper, and this is how it looks like. And it opens a new project. Okay, I don't want a new version. Thank you. If you're not licensing this, then you can just, as again, have a trial, and you can just say still evaluating, and you can still use the program. Now, I already got an error message here, which says that it cannot find the audio device, and that's exactly what I want to show you now. I will put in headphones now, so we don't have too much feedback. And I'm making sure that these headphones are also being used as a microphone. Okay, you should still hear me, I hope. Perfect.
Yeah, everything is okay.
So if I go to the preferences in Reaper, here, there's something called audio and then device, and there you can change the audio device. And now it wants to use an audio device, which I was using before, but it cannot find it. So what I can do here, if I want to use, for example, my AirPods, I can just use my AirPods. If I want to use another loudspeaker, I can just use my loudspeaker. And that's if you have a professional audio interface, such, for example, Scarlett interface that I was showing you the last time, then you will find it in this list, and you can use it for that. And this will give you the inputs and the outputs of the interface. So all the audio that's coming in will get through the inputs of the interface, and the audio that's coming out of the program will go through the output. So you have to then plug your headphones, for example, into your audio interface. Now, for my use case here, I actually have to do something a little different. I have to use separate devices for input and output because I'm using Zoom and I want to show you things. But usually you only have one audio device, but you can also change it. Another thing that you can see here is the request sample rate, and we were already talking about it. We usually want to use 48 kilohertz as a sample rate. So we do this, we hit apply, and then the first thing we do, of course, is we save the project somewhere. So we just, sorry, I'm always too fast with shortcuts. File, save project, and then we call it some name, and we of course save it where we want to save it. Here, yeah, this is where I want to save it. One thing that I always recommend is to look here in the bottom, and there's a box which says move all media into project directory. This is something that's, if you save it, is usually very smart to do. So you should always have it checked, because then you can just copy the folder that you created if you want to give it to someone else, and all the audio that you're working with is already there. Okay, so now I have a project which has also a project name. Now I need to have my script which closed itself. I'm having a script here on the side, so I know what I want to show you. Okay. So let's look a little around so you can see our empty project. Here we have our tracks, here we have our timeline and arranger, and here we have our mixer, and I can, of course, move things also around. But for now, everything is empty. If I want now to create a track, I can basically just double click here and it creates a track. And now I can click here and change the name if I want. I can arm it. Let me mute that. So I can arm it so you don't hear something weird. And yeah. Exactly. And you can see that the level when I talk, it goes up. And you can also see that it's created a track here in the mixer, which is reflecting on the same. So I can change the volume here. There was this thing that you have the volume control here, but you can see that it also moves up and down there. So this basically is linked. So if I take down the volume here on the small wheel, it's the same as if I were to change the volume here. And I personally like to use these things a little more than to use this because I think it's very unhandy, a little too small. Yeah. So we will talk about how to record something in a moment. I just wanted to show you some quick setup with that. Okay, so now that we understand the basics, let's get starting with editing. So I will just delete this and I will just go into my Finder. Close. And here I have some recordings that Benedict did some time ago. And basically we have 4 different cello voices similar to the virtual ensemble project that you have to do. And we want to edit them together. So I have these videos, and what I can do now is I can just take these videos, I can just drag them into my project like this. It will now ask me, do I want to insert it on separate tracks or sequentially after each other on a single track? But because there are 4 different voices, I want to have them all on a separate track, so I can work with each of them separately. Oh, I wanted to show one thing before, so let's undo that. Sorry, one thing. Let's go to project settings. That's what I wanted to do before. So in the project settings, here you have some settings that are only for the project. And the first one is, of course, the sample rate. And again, we want to use 48,000. So that's important. I will just confirm that. Then let's talk about some other settings. Here on the media tab, you are able to choose where the media is saved when you import it. So you can see that because I imported it before, it put all the videos into the same folder. But of course, it's a little more you have a little more overview about the project if you have a separate folder for that. That we call takes, and you can just create it here. That's usually very that makes a lot of sense. Also, when you record, then you will be able to use everything will be recorded into this folder, and you will not have a long list here, but you have just this separate folder here. So I can just delete this for a second. And yeah, and now everything will be recorded in this folder. Okay, These are the two things I want to show you. Now here I have a problem with the sample rate, so maybe let's not use this microphone, but this. Yeah, that looks a little better. Okay. Again, these kind of small technical things usually shouldn't be a problem for you because you're not using Zoom simultaneously. So I'm trying to work around some things here. One last thing in the project settings, which I forgot, here you can also change in which format you want to record. And of course, as I said, we want to always record in the WAV format and we want to record with 24 bits. So this is also what you should make sure that it's set to. Luckily, this is the default. So usually you should not have to change it, but just make sure that it's the right format when you want to record within Reaper. Okay, now we're ready to actually start editing. So again, I am taking my cello takes and usually can drag it. Yes. I will put them on separated tracks and Reaper for me copied all of them into my project file, which as I said, makes sense. Now, as you can see, I have many takes per track. So here I have cello 1, cello 2, cello 3, cello 4. By the way, Reaper already named the tracks for me according to the video name, which is very handy. But I, of course, have to decide which take of each voice I want to use. And so this is what we'll do now. Before we go into that, I would quickly just show you some more features when you are trying to edit. So if we play everything now, you should hear, are you hearing something?
No,
No, no,
no.
didn't.
Yeah, that's not. I muted the master. Okay, give me one moment. Now you heard something, right? Okay, perfect. Yes, I just muted the master, so that was my mistake. You hear that everything sounds very chaotic and it's hard to make sense of everything. There's some buttons here that you can see next to the track. They're called mute and solo. What mute does is basically it mutes the track. So you can mute the top three and you will only be able to hear the fourth one. And solo basically does the inverse, where you are able to just hear the one track that you click solo. And then you can add another track. And in this way, you can edit things by just, for example, starting with the first track and then muting everything else. And then you can work your way forward. That is what we're going to do. You also have these features here. And this is what I did. I muted the master output. And then, of course, you cannot hear anything if the master output is muted because all the audio basically goes through here and it ends up in this master channel, which then we will use to export from. So everything, all the 4 tracks are being summed together into this master. Okay, so this is everything we need to edit. Let's start. First, we need to, of course, after importing the videos, we need to decide which of these takes to choose. And just one small hint, you can also see the video if you are clicking here on edit video window, then you can see the video. The video is always the track which is on top. So if I now put cello 2 on top, then I will see the video of the track of cello 2. If I put cello 1 on top, then I see the track of cello 1. It can be helpful to see the video, but we don't need it for today. So first, I will mute everything else than cello 1. And I know that in cello 1, I want to use the second take. So I need to get rid of the first part and the last part. I can either do that here by clicking and dragging. You can see that my mouse is changing a little into this like C shape and the inverted C shape. And I can basically click and drag like this and then move this clip around. I will show you in the second cello, I will show you another way where we want to take the third time. You can also do that by clicking item split, item add cursor, or you can press S. And what it does, it's just basically creates a cut between these two things, and you can just delete the part before. And I will just roughly move everything underneath. Oops, that's not what I wanted. On the third, we also take the second time, and again, I can just basically go here, press split, and move it here. On the fourth cello, we take the first time, and it really doesn't matter how you do it. And one thing that you have to, of course, is important to know, when you do this, you don't delete anything. You can always expand it back. You can always get the other take back, so you don't have to worry. And it doesn't matter if you split it or just make it shorter like this. It's all the same. Okay, now that we have everything somewhat sorted, what we have to do is we have to synchronize it. And you have already seen maybe that this clip, it moves in small steps. A little bigger. So you can see that here I cannot move it smoothly, but it moves in steps. And these steps are, of course, the tempo, but since I don't know, my project is not set up to use the same tempo, we just want to get rid of it. First, I remove the zoom bar, and we get rid of it with enabling the snap, the small magnet. And now you can see that we can move it smoothly around. And what we're basically doing now is we want to synchronize these two things, and we'll do it by just listening. So I just muted the other two channels, and I want to basically have these two instruments play together on the same time. I can start by looking roughly that it looks somewhat, they start at the same time, and now I will listen. So, of course, cello 2 is way too early. Now it's a little too late. Yeah, that sounds roughly right. You can, of course, improve it. One thing, why does this work? Because Benedict, when he recorded it, as you can see, he used headphones here. And in this headphones, he was listening to a metronome. So everything is having the same tempo. And although he recorded them different, like after each other, because it was played to a metronome, you can synchronize it like that. And this is why we say that you need a time reference, either a metronome, another recording of, for example, another instrument, or a click track, which is basically a programmable metronome, because only then you can actually put these things underneath each other. If you don't do this, you will have problems with synchronization. Okay, so let's continue. Cello 3. Again, we put it roughly on the right spot and have a listen. Okay, I can already say it's too late. Okay, still a little late. Okay, maybe a little too early, but let's leave it somewhat like this. Yeah. And let's add cello 4, which of course is also roughly correct now. Okay, it's too early. Okay, so that is played somewhat together now, which is nice, which is what we wanted, and my script keeps closing. Oh, wow, it's annoying. One moment. Okay, so now what we want to do is, of course, we want to adjust some things. First, you can see that there were some noises here, for example, in the video. And as I already said, we can just shorten the clips here. So we should make sure that the clips, of course, they don't cut into the music, but they are not unnecessarily long, so we don't have any of the noises. For example, here he says which instrument it is. So we should do that. And what we also should do in general is to add fades. So when you see here, I have a small C as a cursor, but if I go up, there's a small quarter circle, and if I do that, I have what's called a fade in. I can just use small fades in the beginning and the end to avoid any unnecessary clicks that might happen. And we will also use these fades in another way in a moment. So this is also what I recommend you doing in general. Always have a small fade in and fade out. Now here you can see with cello 2 in the end that cello 2 actually is way too long. So I can also use a fade here, make it a little longer, and actually cut a little into the music so it fades out somewhat together with the other instruments. Okay, it was a little too early and a little too long. Yeah, and this way I can, for example, shorten it a little and still have it sound together. And similarly, this cello 3 was starting too early. So I can just do the same here, use a very short fade in because you don't want to have a long fade in. And this way I can edit the beginning and the end. Now there's also one more thing that I want to show is how to edit different takes of the same voice together. And if we hear, for example, the cello 1, the second time it's maybe not so well performed. And I want to use the second time, sorry, of another take, which is the third take, which you can hear. Sounds much nicer. So what I can do is I can just select the clip and then press S, for example, to split it at the second time. And I will do it also here at the third time. I will just delete the part in between. And now what I will do, I will just move this third time backwards and edit it together using a fade. If I don't use a fade, then it would roughly sound like this. Oh, I want to solo it, sorry. Yeah, so you can hear some silence or like it doesn't fit well together. The nice thing about using Reaper is that it creates the fades for you when you are moving these things over each other. You can see this red X is what's called a crossfade. And so the one audio fades out while the other fades in. And what I like to do in these situations is I will just make this one a little longer. So I can recognize, for example, this bulb is the same musical spot as this. And what I do is just move it until they overlap somewhat. And so I roughly know that it's in the right place. And then, of course, can adjust it always a little later. But for now, I can do that. I can change the fade, for example, to make it a little shorter. Also, I can maybe make it a little later. And then this is how what the cello 1 sound like. And thanks to the crossfade, you cannot hear the difference. That it's from 2 takes, and everything together now sounds like this. Okay, and now we hear that it's a little too early, so I can just move it a little back. Oh no, I think it was too late. Yeah, and in this way, we have now a nicer, higher note with better intonation than before. And and everything is still together. And again, of course, we have to change this also to match the ending. Oops. Okay, so this is how you can edit different your different recordings together in Reaper. Then, of course, what you would have to do is to mix it. We will talk about this next time. What I will show you now is how you can export it. And for this, I just make sure that all these clips are somewhat starting together. Then I can select arrange. Here. Is the internet problem better now? Sorry, I just saw the message. Or was it, it didn't show me some internet issues. So if the connection is better, I hope it is. If not, please tell me. So I can select arrange here just by dragging on the top. Of course, I make sure that I cover all the clips. And then exporting in Reaper is called rendering. And so under file render, you can select that. Of course, what we want to export is our master mix. This is our master here, but we don't want the entire project. We want to have the time selection, which is what we just did. We are calling this some name, maybe the date to know when it was exported. Of course, we want to have 48 kilohertz because we want to use this recording in the video. I would, as I recommended, use WAV and 24 bits. If it's something that you're sending to a teacher or something, then you can, of course, also just use MP3 here to make smaller files. And then basically, you have to choose, of course, where to export it. Here, browse. Maybe create a new folder for exports. Choose the folder, and then it will export it. You click render. It will usually be very fast. And then when you go here, you're in your exports folder, you will see the audio file that I just created, and it will sound like this. Okay, so this is how you can edit different recordings together in Reaper. Any questions so far? Okay, to be the case, then let's continue with talking shortly about recording, and then we talk about how to do a click track. And it will be a little longer than 3, but I hope that's okay. So I will just save this project. I will create a new project here, just to have an empty project. And let's quickly talk about recording once more. So when we're recording, again, you can just create tracks by double clicking, and you can rename them. You can, for example, also, if you have different instruments, you can call them voice or like clarinet. And you can record them by pressing, first you need to Arna. And now you hear me twice. And I will, that's why I have to mute myself. Okay. And as I said, you can already see my level, and I could basically now start recording. But first I need to make sure that the right microphone is chosen. So I already said I have to choose the right input, audio device. But also there's, of course, some audio devices like professional sound cards that have several microphone inputs that you can put your microphones into. So if you use only one microphone, you have to, of course, choose which of these inputs you're using. If you're using 2 microphones in the ORTF, like I explained last time, then I recommend you to use not 2 tracks, one for each microphone, but to actually use a stereo input. And there it will show you your 2 inputs. Now I have only one, so it doesn't show me. And you can just use them. And then you have both microphones on one track, which makes handling it a lot easier. One moment.
Okay. Once you have chosen the right input, then and you have armed the track, then you can just hit record, and you just do it by pressing record. And now you can see that a file is being created here, a clip, and you can just play now. I now will say some weekdays, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then when you're done, you can just press the same button again, and it will stop recording. And now I can play back the recording.
Pressing record, and now you can see that a file is being created here, a clip, and you can just play now. I now will just say some weekdays, Monday, Tuesday.
Exactly. And if you want to record multiple channels simultaneously, now of course it uses the same microphone, but you will use different microphones here. Then you can just arm the microphones that you want to record, and then you again press record, and then it will record again onto these tracks. Now it's recording on these two because these are the two that I marked as record armed. And of course, I can play back this again. It will be now a little confusing.
Created here, and then a clip.
So, but you can see that everything that's under here, it will be basically be played back. Okay, so much for recording. Let's go on to click track. And this is maybe somewhat, I think, it's a rather important thing. If you want to use a metronome for recording your pieces and you want to have a more dynamic metronome than just having a static click. So, of course, when you perform classical music, usually you have accelerandi or some agogic that is supporting the performance, and not everything is going through a steady tempo. Or you have changes of time signature and tempo. And so you want to be able to also represent it with a metronome. And for this, you can program a metronome, which is then basically a click track. And I will now show you how to do it. So if you are going into insert here, you find an option which is called a click source. So you can just hit insert and click source, and it will create a new track here, and we can call it click track. And you will see here one item which has different spikes. And if you play this back, you hear just a metronome. Now, the good thing is I can change this length, but I can also change tempo. And this is, again, what we'll do now. Before that, let's go into the options of the project. And let's just change one thing. So, of course, you want it to be synced with your score of your piece, but the piece starts at bar 1. Now, usually you want to have some sort of count in. So I will change this to -1. So you can see now that I have 2 more bars as count in, and then my piece can start here at bar 1. And something I actually didn't show you in the timeline, you can also see that you have numbers, which are the seconds, which are small, but you also have bigger numbers, which are actually the bars. You can see here, bar 1, bar 2, bar 3, bar 4, and the 0.1 just means speed 1. And if I make it a little larger, you can see that here it's bar 1, speed 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4. So these are all the beats, which you can also see here. And this way you can follow the music. And of course, your music starts at bar 1. So here, and with this changing the project to start at -1, what you have is 2 bars until the music starts here. And now the music starts. Okay, so this is something I would recommend to you, because then you can just start here programming your music. And maybe you want to change the tempos. And again, this is a little annoying that it closes the script. give me 1 second. So first we want to see the tempo track or tempo envelope. And you can, again, click View Tempo Envelope. And what it creates is here you have another line, and this is the tempo. You can make it a little bigger. And this is basically the tempo. And if I go here and I change the tempo of the project, then I can change the whole tempo. You can change the tempo of the project either by dragging this dot here up and down. You can see that this changes. It makes it shorter or longer. Or I can set the tempo, for example, here. And for example, my piece starts with 90 BPM. I can press enter. And if I now hit play, the click will be a little slower. Okay, so now again, my piece starts, and maybe we want to have actually a tempo change in bar 8. And this would be, for example, a sudden tempo change. So I just expand my click source a little. And here in bar 8, I have, for example, have a tempo change, and it just gets faster to tempo 130. Then I can just go with my cursor to bar 8 at beat 1. I click here on the BPM to change it to 130. And now if I play back some bars before, you can hear that the click just gets faster. So 2 bars of slower tempo, and now it gets faster. Yeah, and this way I can have, for example, a sudden tempo change. I can, of course, also change the time signature. Let's say in bar 11, then we have a different time signature. And this time signature is maybe 5/8. So I can just click here on the next to the tempo. There's a time signature. I can just write 5/8 and I hit enter. And but it's a different tempo. The quarter is not 130 anymore, but let's say 90 again. And now it sounds like this. 1 bar of 90 in 4/4, and 2 bars in 130 at 3 bars. And now we have a 5/8, for example. So in this way, I can just go through the score and change all these things. Now, there's, of course, some parts where you have a fermata or you have an accelerando or ritardando. So in these cases, you can also make gradual changes. Let's say I want to have a tempo change from bar 15 to bar 16, and it should get slower. What I do first is I go to bar 15 and I just go into this window and press once more enter. Then you can see it creates another dot here. And then I go to bar 16, and for example, this should be tempo 66. Now, again, we have a sudden change, but what we actually wanted is we want to have a gradual change. So I can right click on this dot here and set shape for selected point and choose it to linear. Oh wait, there was the wrong selected point. I have to select the point again. Now it's selected. Set shape for selected point to linear. You can see now we have a line here. And instead of being a sudden change, we have now a gradual change. Yeah, and similarly, we can, of course, get faster again. Let's say we start from here and then over 2 bars. It's a little longer. This bar 18, let's have over 2 bars. We want to have a tempo of 155, which then goes back to say 3/4. And again, we have to change this, select this dot, right click, and select shape for selected point to be linear. And in this way, we have now accelerando. Yeah, and this way you can go through the whole score and basically create something, a click track similar to how you're a conductor, and just program all these tempo changes, meter changes. You can then export this again by just selecting all the range, file render, make sure we have the master mix time selection. We'll call it click track for my piece. And we choose a directory and maybe our export. With a click track, it's not so important to be high quality. Maybe it's better to have actually a smaller file. So you can use MP3 here. And then again, you just click render. Then it creates this click track. And it appears here in your exports folder. You can then bring it onto your phone. And when you play, you can just listen to it. And you have 2 bars of count in. And now you can start performing. And it will be synced to all your music. And you can, every musician can use this when they record their part. So in the end, you can bring everything together just as I showed you. Okay, we're actually somewhat in time. That's nice. Do you have any questions to that? I'm just checking if I forgot anything. But if you have any questions, please raise your hand or just talk. That's okay. I'll also check the chat. Okay, I guess there's no questions. Perfect. So then let's go back to the presentation. These are just some written down things for you. They're all in the resources folder that I shared you. Here you have some links also about Reaper. And now, of course, as always, let's conclude. So today we've talked about what a DAW is, and we've looked at Reaper. We got an overview about Reaper. We got a first impression of how we can edit different takes together in Reaper. And also we talked about how we can record and create a click track in Reaper. This we already had. So, your task for this week after you formed your groups, and please again make sure that if you want to have a certificate, you are doing this project and you have to be in a group. Please start the first recordings for your VE project, and you will present your first recordings. It doesn't have to be mixed. It doesn't have to be put together. Just some recordings next week, either Monday or Thursday. And we will just talk about your recordings, your experience, what was the strategy that you used, etc. And next week, we will be talking about how we can mix our recordings so they sound a little better when we put all of it together. And this will be the topic for next week. Okay, so thank you. And now we will, as always, continue with a milestone.